Yo, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. And to the surprise of some, not myself, but some, all four of the consensus best 2026 pending unrestricted free agents have extended with their respective teams before they even played a game this season with those teams. That being Kirill Kaprizov on an 8-year deal at $17 million. Connor McDavid, the most team-friendly deal of all time. 2 years, $12.5 million. Kyle Connor going 8 years, $12 mil. And Jack Eichel, 8 years, $13.5 million. I've been saying for a while that all of these guys were going to end up extending with their teams. I thought that some of them would have brought it into the season to kind of get some more negotiation and leverage. But instead, before the puck drops on any of these guys' seasons, they're locked up. We don't really have much of a 2026 unrestricted free agency class, and I think that only more top guys are going to end up extending relatively soon. So today, I kind of wanted to go through the 3 reasons why this happened and why it probably will continue for the next 3 to 4 years, as well as why really nothing has happened in the NHL of note in terms of big moves, even though the insiders tried to tell you that there would be big moves for the last 4 to 5 months. And lastly, maybe end on some optimism, what 2026 unrestricted free agents could potentially hit the open market, because there will be some. Hopefully we'll actually get some big names and not just a bunch of bums. So let's talk about it. First reason is pretty straightforward, and I can't see anybody disagreeing with it. At the end of the day, hockey players are just very loyal, very humble, maybe don't have the individualistic egos that some other sports have. It is a very team atmosphere, and as a result, these guys love their teammates, love the locker room, love the organization. And in the case of guys like McDavid and Kyle Connor, they've been on those teams since they were teenagers, a decade plus at this point. They're familiar with their organization. They're familiar with their city, and rightfully so. They don't want to have to potentially uproot it all and leave. They just want the security. They want the bag, and also you could get hurt at any point, but they just want the security and to lock it in with their respective franchises. And I mean, when you look at it from Jack Eichel's point of view, he knows how bad it can be in Buffalo for 6 years, not making the playoffs, not really sniffing it at all. So he can appreciate what Vegas as an organization can bring in terms of on and off the ice. And Kaprizov's been there for 5 years. Which the Eichel side of that really brings me to that next point. When looking at these 4 guys that all re-signed, they're all in very good situations. Connor McDavid has made back-to-back Stanley Cup finals, and this year, Zach Hyman didn't play. Matthias Ekholm was at 60%, not saying they would have beaten the Florida Panthers, but although they definitely have problems that they need to address in terms of goalie, they've ran through the Western Conference the last 2 years, so rightfully so, he thinks that they could win a Stanley Cup over the next 3 years if we just improve some things. Jack Eichel, again, 6 years in Buffalo, goes to Vegas, his first full season, he wins the Stanley Cup, and last year they win the division, as well as win a round in the playoffs. Kyle Connor's squad has safely made the playoffs the last 2 years. In this most recent season, won the President's Trophy, as well as got out of the first round, and he has other stars like Connor Hellebuck, Josh Morrissey, and Mark Scheifele all around his age. Kaprizov, although he has not won a playoff series in his 5 seasons with the Minnesota Wild, that has a lot to do with the fact that they had the Parise and Suter buyouts on the books, and he's made the playoffs 4 out of the last 5 years, and they still have one of the best under 25 cores in the entire NHL. There's young talent to take serious steps and become a contender. So yeah, these 4 guys are all in very good spots where they realistically could potentially win a championship in the next 3 to 4 years. You look at some other superstars that ended up leaving. John Tavares, as much as I wanted my New York Islanders and him to want to trade at the trade deadline, they had just been a painfully mediocre team the last 3 to 4 years. So as a result, he left. And Panarin and Bobrovsky in 2019, although Columbus did win that playoff series against Tampa Bay, they were a little bit fugazi. It's not like they were a legit contender. The final reason why these guys are re-signing, and I compared it to the Incredibles quote from Syndrome, great movie, I'm sure you've watched it, but how he says, when everybody is super, nobody is super. You can compare that to the NHL and say, when everybody has such an influx of salary cap space because of the salary cap jumps, nobody can really actually use that space because everybody's able to re-sign their players now. When it was announced back in January, every team was given an extra $4 to $5 million that they were not expecting to have. As a result, the Minnesota Wild can pay so much to get Kirill Kaprizov. We agree. It's an overpayment in a flat cap system. You maybe have to trade somebody to make room for Kaprizov, but now they can use that cap saving that happened because of the increased revenue to re-sign a Kirill Kaprizov. like we saw in a flat cap system, unrestricted free agency was actually pretty fun in 2021 and 2022 because the Carolina Hurricanes, they didn't quite want to give Dougie Hamilton some massive contract. The Colorado Avalanche, after winning the Stanley Cup, they had to let Nazem Kadri walk. The Florida Panthers, meanwhile, are bringing back all their trade deadline acquisitions. They had to let Kadri walk. Zach Hyman left Toronto based off like $500,000 because the Toronto Maple Leafs just could not make it work. It actually did work in Tampa's direction because they didn't re-sign Andre Palat and Alex Killorn. But during the flat cap system, you just couldn't re-sign guys. Now you can re-sign everybody, and on top of that, still have salary cap space. Maybe in like 4 to 5 years, once all of the flat cap deals are kind of out there for the most part, it will readjust and we might have more of an active free agency. But at least for the next 2 to 3 years, man, these teams are going to have a lot of salary cap space. As we talked about before, these hockey players are very loyal. So as long as they're in somewhat of a good situation and not just tanking it up, rebuilding, teams are going to mostly be able to re-sign all of their players. Which brings me to my final kind of point, not on the re-signing, but why nothing has really happened in the NHL of late, the last 4 to 5 months after everybody was saying offer sheets, everybody was saying trades. The problem is right now, there's no real big seller in the NHL. We thought maybe the Pittsburgh Penguins, this would be the offseason that they're blowing it up. Brian Rust, Rickard Rakell, Carlson, Malkin, maybe even Sidney Crosby, but they're kind of waiting it out to see if this team still has one more run. And as a result, there's just not any sellers. Look at it from the years of like 2021 to 2025. You had teams, and we did the rebuild reviews on them, like the Canadiens, Ducks, Wings, Coyotes, Jackets, Flyers, Sharks, Hawks, Canadians, all at one point or another selling pretty heavily. Right now, you might have the Pittsburgh Penguins. You might have my New York Islanders if they end up stinking it up. You might have the Calgary Flames, but they were a 96-point team last year. The Seattle Kraken probably should sell it up, but I don't think Ron Francis is going to do that. And all the teams that are actually kind of bad, like Chicago and San Jose, they're now trying to exit their rebuild. They don't really have much to sell remaining after selling off Seth Jones, Mikkel Granlund, Wallman, and Blackwood. So yeah, all of these teams have a metric shit ton of salary cap space. The Carolina Hurricanes still have $10 million of cap space, but nobody is willing to sell. That'll obviously change at the deadline, but also the deadline is impacted because the playoff salary cap is going into effect. So we're probably not going to see shit this trade deadline. Maybe this offseason it becomes more clear who is potentially entering into that rebuild or heavy retool. But right now, we only maybe have the Pittsburgh Penguins. Okay, now we're just going to kind of finish out the video going over which guys I think could potentially hit the open market in 2026. And spoiler alert, it's not a ton of good guys. Artemi Panarin, Rangers fans were like kind of delusional that maybe if one of those top 4 guys hit the open market, they'll let Panarin walk and use that money to land them. That's not happening now. I think that they're going to re-sign Artemi Panarin like 3 to 4 years at like $8 to $10 million, depending on how he performs this season. Necas, though. Necas is the one guy that, similarly to Kaprizov, seems like he's bag first. He wants a shit ton of money. And if Colorado is not willing to go to a certain number with Mikko Rantanen, would they be willing to go to $11.5 million with Martin Necas? That's like the one guy that you could argue is an elite player that could hit the open market. Ovechkin's either re-signing or retiring. I think we all agree on that. Adrian Kempe, I'm actually surprised that they didn't get something done before the season, which worries me a little bit. Maybe he's waiting to see how the first year of Ken Holland goes, but I still think that he is going to re-sign. He is their one. He's like the face of the franchise. Once Kopitar is retiring and Drew Doughty moves on, he's the guy. I think they're going to pay him like he's the guy. And Anze Kopitar is retiring. Alex Tuch is a very interesting one. I could see him getting traded somewhere because he only has a $4.75 million cap hit and then immediately re-signing, extending with that team. But there's a chance that he hits the open market, and if he doesn't get traded and misses the playoffs, I don't... He might end up signing with Buffalo. They might just overpay him so much, but we'll see. Nick Schmaltz, I can maybe see hitting the open market, considering the fact that Utah has a lot of young forwards coming up within the system. But again, we're talking about Nick Schmaltz potentially being a top 3 forward in this class. Patrick Kane, him and DeBrincat, he likes it in Detroit. But if they miss the playoffs again, does he potentially hit the open market? I think Anders Lee is going to re-sign on like a 2 to 3 year deal at like $2 to $3 million with the New York Islanders. Matt Zuccarello, I think they'll find a way to re-sign him cheap. Carlson's going to re-sign with the Washington Capitals. He's a legend there. Going to get a jersey retired one day. Malkin's either retiring, maybe could hit the open market. Maybe Evgeny Malkin in the year 2026 is going to be our prime free agent. That'd be pretty depressing, but would be interesting. Giroux, I think he'll just sign another 1 year deal with the Ottawa Senators. Jamie Benn, like same thing there. And yeah, the rest of these guys are pretty irrelevant for the most part. Again, this is early October what the 2026 class is looking like. Adam Lowry is going to get a solid bag from the Winnipeg Jets. He's a very underrated player. Ryan McDonough will probably re-sign with Tampa Bay Lightning. I don't know what Mike Matheson, Montreal fans, let me know. I don't think he'd probably get more on the open market. Rasmus Anderson, I think he's probably going to get traded and then sign an extension similar to what happened to Noah Hannafin at the 2024 deadline. And yeah, besides that, really not much, man. Really, really not much. Let's go over to the goalies. Gustafsson was really the only top-tier goalie. Carey Price. Bobrovsky's going to re-sign. We agree on that. Markstrom, I'm very confident. I think Weeks tweet something out regarding an extension? I think he did with Markstrom, so he's probably going to re-sign. Stuart Skinner, it really just depends on how he plays this season. It's not looking good for the 2026 unrestricted free agent class. And as I talked about before, I don't think it's going to look much better for the next couple of years. But at least your favorite team will hopefully be able to re-sign some guys. Hopefully we get some sellers to emerge relatively soon because we want moves. We want trade. I want to cover trades. I want to talk about trades. I'll be seeing the next one. Thank you guys so much for the really nice comments on the BR Open Ice post. Started a week ago. Really excited for that. As you can see, I'm still making videos when I'm off shift. They let me do whatever the hell I want. They're the best. Thank you. I'll be seeing the next one. Peace.